Man of Science, Man of Faith, episode 7.99 is now up. Election 2020, you're not safe. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you can find podcasts. And that brings us to today's episode. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time, which is expand beyond music. And today I have George Collins. He is the founder and director of Neulia by Compulsion Solutions and is a recognized expert on sexually compulsive behavior. George holds a master's degree in counseling psychology from John F. Kennedy University. Here he is, the one and only George Collins. Okay, I think we have started now. So today we have George Collins, the author of Breaking the Cycle. Can you tell me a little bit about the inspiration for the book?
Yes, Taylor, I was a sex addict myself, porn addict mostly, but many, many years ago before the internet, just even before VCRs. My idea of a good time was to find a Sears catalog, the Bryads, and masturbate to that. So that was many, many years ago before it got completely out of hand. So I'm a nice enough guy and I do pretty well. But I underachieved and I under-earned because I was always thinking about sex and how to get it. I was preoccupied. Some people call it addicted. The words addict wasn't popular in those days. So I tried to get some therapy around it, presented it to therapists, and through the years, no one really understood or what I meant, and everybody said it was okay. Everybody does it, and blah, 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 blah. And as it got worse and worse, I got worse and worse. And my performance in life was less than useful. I lost two wives, two really good wives, two keepers over this, not over the sex addiction per se, but my attitude, my fear and my shame and my pain and my self-doubt and my self-judgment and my self-criticism and my anger. So those were the things that caused me to have the problem. I had the problem because my mother and father were addicts, and my mother sexually abused me, and my father physically abused me. So those are prime ingredients for people to find some addiction. Because I found my father's porn, it was easy for me to transpose that. He was an alcoholic too, but watching them look so sloppy that I guess I unconsciously picked sex because it was more fun. And the truth is nobody ever had a bad orgasm. So they were fun when I was a kid and I didn't know what to do. And the magazines were available and it spiraled from there. Like I said, I underachieved and I under-earned, even though I did well. It was nothing like what I could have done. No, I didn't live up to my potential. So after the second wife left, I moved to California. My sister said maybe a change of scenery, but that doesn't really work because wherever you go, there you are. And so there I was in California. But the good part about living in California is there's all kind of inspiration and everybody does therapy and so I was exposed to more options. I finally didn't know what to do, so I couldn't get help from anybody I knew out here. Therapy wasn't working. I spent over $100,000 in my lifetime on traditional talk therapy. And on the way home from those sessions, I'd stop at a porn shop and pick up some porn and masturbate all weekend. So that didn't work for me. Talking about it was funny, almost humorous to my inner addict, that part of me that wanted to do it. So I found the 12 steps of Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. I got into that. I did very, very well. I became, after being a sponsee, I finally became a sponsor, and I sponsored probably 30 or 40 people, even one woman in Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, which was quite unusual. During that time, I kind of realized that if I couldn't get help from somebody else, then I was the only one that could fix this. And so in order to do that,
I was going to ask, what exactly is sex and porn addiction?
um, sex and porn addiction is the inability to function normally in relationships and work and social settings and hobbies, just having a fun life. It's preoccupation to the point where your life gets altered, and not for the better. It's being a lonely guy in a dark room with your penis in your hands. That's kind of what it ends up being, or out with prostitutes or something.
So what is the pathology, I guess, of the disease? Who are sex addicts?
Sex addicts are generally people who've had difficult early childhoods, abuse, abandonment, betrayal, exposure to sexual material, um, incest with family members, um, people who who have a neurotic, who grow up in homes where neurosis, that fear and shame and pain and
Trauma.
self-doubt and judgment, criticism and anger, where those things are kind of fostered. So you can choose alcohol, you can choose drugs, you can choose food. Some people choose sex.
So those who choose sex, there's a lot of misconceptions, I feel like, in our society and our culture. This is a very taboo topic.
Right,
Because I feel people think of Harvey Weinstein, they think of Bill Cosby, people
right,
like that when they think of sex addicts.
right.
And what you're saying is that's not the case. It's normal people that grew up in traumatic situations who haven't learned how to function.
I'd like to tell you that in a funny way, everybody's a sex addict because you're going to do it. You're going to have sex. It's like food. You're going to eat. So everybody is addicted to food, and everybody's, quote, addicted to sex. So you're going to have sex. It's just a matter of how you do it. Does that make any sense?
That makes sense.
So the people that get caught up in it, the people that get caught up in it that use it as a coping mechanism, a mechanism for coping with trauma or fear or anxiety.
Avoiding feelings.
Yeah, it's just a way of dealing with feelings. And the problem is that you don't really understand that you're doing it. You think it's normal and you normalize it. And the bigger problem is that Madison Avenue knows that sex sells. And so look around. Sex is hot, sex addiction isn't talked about, but sex sure is. Sex sells. The pictures of women selling hamburgers with their breasts hanging out, and everywhere you look. With
Well,
all
I think
block.
you talk about in the book too, kind of Madison Avenue using the same terms for food that they do as sex,
Yeah,
sensuous,
yeah, yeah.
stuff like that.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. It's messy.
What do you think? How can this be brought into the mainstream? Like, how can people start talking about it? There's a few people like Terry Crews that are out there who are kind of an advocate, but it's still very taboo in American culture.
It was a few years ago. I did a lot. They flew me to New York to do TV shows, but for some reason, it's kind of gone underground. I'm not exactly sure why. Uh, uh, Maybe because the political situation in the last few years has been so inflammatory, and there's so much polarization that people are preoccupied more with other things than they are with self-help.
Interesting. Yeah, because if you look at American culture, like you were saying with Madison Avenue, sex is all around us all the time. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that per se. I'm no prude, but I feel like there are side effects that we aren't talking about from this. And there's a lot of people, like you were kind of saying, that are suffering almost in silence. You were talking about your experience and kind of suffering in silence, and it just being seen as, oh, this is normal, this is natural. But in the same way that people are like, some people just can't drink, they can't have a beer without having
Right.
15, 20, whatever, and going on a bender. It's the same way for sex addicts, you're saying.
Yeah, I don't or can't look at J-Lo on the red carpet, and she's almost every day in some revealing outfit on my newsfeed. I just skip over it because it's just not healthy for me. And I'm recovered. I'm in real good shape. But one of my chapters in my book is called First Thought Wrong, and then Second Thought Right. First thought wrong, second thought wrong, third thought right. So a part of what I do, my book is different than other books because it actually is a self-help book. The whole idea that we have is to instruct our clients how to be their own therapist. So it's radically different than sitting around talking about sex addiction.
And is that because of your own personal experience with
Yeah,
sex and porn addiction?
I had to fix it. If I didn't fix it, I was going to end up a lonely old man in a dark room with my penis in my hand. I didn't want that. I mean, I saw it coming. I mean, I was older. I was 45 years old before I really got any kind of handle on that this was bad and I had to do something about it, or I wasn't going to have a decent human being, a woman in my life, a partner, and I couldn't be intimate. There's a difference between sex and intimacy, you know. And all I ever thought was sex. And when I had partners, I would have sex with them, but I would be thinking about porn, or I would be thinking about other women. And that was because of my, the incest my mother perpetrated on me. And what men do oftentimes, almost always, is maternalize their wives. They just don't know they're doing it. When they say the honeymoon's over, what that really means is that unconsciously you've made your wife into a mother because now you're living with her and it kind of replicates your early situation. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's kind of weird. Once I tell people that they've maternalized their wife, the clouds come away and she starts to look hot. The word hot, I hate the word hot, but she starts to look hot again.
There's an attraction there again.
Yeah, because you don't know that you're doing it, but as soon as you start living with somebody, it unconsciously replicates the 16 or 18 years you lived in your house with this woman called mom.
When someone is in a relationship, what are the warning signs that their partner might be a porn or a sex addict?
If the sex starts to dry up, if they're not emotionally available, sometimes money starts being short and disappearing, not as if they're using real people. If they disappear into the bathroom or go lock the door in their office at home nowadays, we're getting a huge influx of clients because men are home now and locking themselves in a spare room pretending to do work, and wives are catching them, and it's good for us, it's good for them, but it's hard. It's hard on families.
Can we get a little bit into the science of the brain in this addiction, and addiction in general? What does that look like? As far as just like, I've heard a little bit about rewiring the brain. Your brain has to be rewired. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, have you read Your Brain on Porn?
That is, what's the guy's name?
I'm blanking
Something
on.
Wilson.
Yeah, wonderful guy, really smart, and it's an excellent book. It's a primer. It really helps you understand how your brain works. The thing is that we are not our mind. We are not our mind. We are conscious awareness, and we have this software that is installed as we grow, as we're from the time we're infants. That makes sense to you?
Yes.
So that thing on your shoulder blades you thought was a head is actually a hard drive. And on that hard drive is everything that you ever smelled, tasted, touched, heard, or anything at all. And most of it's good. Most of it's good. You go about your business during the day, you do what you're supposed to do, you're a good person. But then if the wiring, if the software that was written by your family of origin or the girl next door, or for whatever reason, your sexual wiring or software gets corrupted, then and the payoff is an orgasm, then that's how your brain is on porn, because your brain is not who you are.
It gets
It's really,
hijacked.
really, it's hijacked. So the hardest thing I have to explain to people is that you're not your mind. It's not an easy thing, because mind wants you to believe everything it's thinking in the moment, and none of it. It's just not true, because even a computer doesn't always tell the truth. If you don't update your software on a computer, you're not efficient with the computer. So every month on my computer or so, I get a little window comes up and it says, "Do you want to update your software? Push this button." And I push the button, and I have new software, better software. The computer works better. I'm more productive. We just don't have a delete button on our neck. You don't have a delete button on your neck, do you?
No, I haven't had it installed by Elon Musk
Right.
yet.
Right. So the only delete button I've found is my book, and working with one of us, is that we help you delete old corrupted software around sex and porn and prostitutes and massage and all the weird stuff that goes along with it. And I've heard a ton of really out there stuff. We help you delete, and we help you have a refresh button so that you refresh, and then you can experience love and intimacy. And as a byproduct of this thing, most of the people that come to me start making more money after they leave, because it's kind of a simple notion that if they aren't thinking about sex and how to get it all the time, and don't feel fearful and ashamed and angry over sneaking around, then, oh, what the hell, they might as well make more money and be really productive. And it happens all the time.
When it comes to addiction now, porn addiction, we have this phone in our pockets that has access to everything we could ever imagine. And especially the past couple of months, I keep reading that OnlyFans, as you know, people are getting desperate out there to make money. They're out of work. They're turning to things like women are turning to things like OnlyFans to kind of supplement their income a little bit. I'm kind of curious about maybe the similarity between porn addiction and opioid addiction a little bit. How many people can actually maintain like a normal, healthy relationship? Not necessarily how many people, but with sex and porn, since we have so much access to it. Because I know with like the opioid thing, there's people who don't have any history of addiction or trauma or anything like that in their family, and they get hooked on these pills. You know, if they had a surgery or something like that.
Right.
So what are kind of your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, everybody's had some kind of trauma.
Okay.
It just is. So you don't, nobody escapes. I tell people that you bring anybody you want to in my office and I'll have them crying in 10 minutes. Good. Yep. There's nobody escapes having some kind of crazy thing that went on in their life. And it may not be a lot, and it may have an exemplary home, but everybody's had some trauma. And so there's always an opening for a way to cope. Now, when you think of it, when you smoke marijuana or even do maybe crack cocaine's pretty much of a rush, but when you're drinking alcohol or smoking marijuana, you don't have an orgasm. An orgasm is a peak experience in your life. I mean, it's unbelievable. There's no way to replicate it. And so sex is the hardest addiction I know of to get over. I have people that are doing crack cocaine and that are doing alcohol and drugs, because most people are have the combination of some kind. And they easily stop that stuff. But the hardest part I have is to get them to stop the sex addiction because of the rush. And it's not just the orgasm, it's the chase, it's the excitement. It's trying to find somebody online.
Blue sky
It's
and
trying
high
to find
heels.
just the right video, just the right video
Mm-hmm.
for that moment. And then they'll go on for, I have people that spend 4, 5, 6 hours a day and masturbate, 4, 5, 6 times. I had a guy masturbating so many times that when he had an orgasm, it was bloody.
Oh God.
I mean, that's dangerous stuff.
Wow. Yeah.
You can cut that out if you want to.
No. I want to leave it in. I want people to hear this and understand that this is like a real thing. Cause I think a lot of people, they hear about porn and sex addiction and they just kind of scoff at it.
That's a
And
progressive disorder. It gets worse.
how so?
Well, if you have you ever been to Pornhub?
Yes, I have been a time or two.
Okay, go to Pornhub and look at the right-hand column and the bottom and all these things. This is where they're trying to sell the package. So Pornhub says free porn, because people call me and say it's free. I'm only doing free porn. I'm not paying for it. Well, you are paying for it in time, because what is your time worth? I once accumulated the hours that I had spent looking at sex and thinking about it, and I lost, and I multiplied by my general wage, that would be, I don't know, $25 an hour, which wasn't what I make now, but it was an early living wage. And my shortfall was $1 million. So I lost $1 million. And most people have lost, whenever you're using porn in a dark room, you're losing time, valuable time for your partner, time you could be working or thinking about important, intelligent things, stuff like that.
Thinking about this makes me think a little bit about kind of what's happening with a lot of young men in America right now. I think young men in some ways are really put down by our culture, not necessarily put down, but they're not allowed to express themselves or talk about these kind of things or talk about their trauma or the difficulties that they've had in life. It's seen as shameful by our society. They put it down, and
But
we
also
see.
weak. It makes you weak. That's what they say.
Yes, makes you weak. Exactly. And you see almost this backlash that's happening in, the incel culture, which stands for involuntary celibate.
Right.
Um, what are your thoughts on that, and like incels in general, and what have you seen? What have you personally dealt with?
Well, most everybody that calls here feels like they haven't had enough sex, and that when they were 15, the cheerleader wouldn't go out with them. There's story after story after story about people that have been rebuffed, and those guys uh, get themselves into feelings of fear and shame and pain, and they doubt themselves and they judge
Rejection.
themselves, and it makes them really, really angry. So a lot of these incel groups are just angry men, young men and older men, who are banded together to just feel better about something. At least they can bitch about women. At least they can bitch about not getting enough sex. And I've had people like that. Almost everybody that comes here has felt like they didn't score, or the girl they wanted didn't died on them, or wouldn't go out with them, or went out with their friend. I mean, all that is fodder for the incel culture. And if you carry it too far, then you find people of like mind, and you band together and you gripe and grouse and sometimes do really weird stuff.
So these incels, the people that are doing like the mass shootings and things like that, do you think that these people could potentially be porn addicts, or what are your
Well,
thoughts on that?
read the statistics. I mean, if you really, I haven't done a whole lot of research, but every time I read about a mass shooting, the stuff they find on their computer is there's porn. There's some degradation of people, and mostly women.
Interesting. And for something like that, it goes back again to that early childhood trauma, and
Right.
they're upset, they're angry, they feel like they're left out by society.
Isolated. Isolation is a
Isolated,
big deal.
yes.
You got to, one of the things I do with people, first of all, when they come here, when I work with them, is get them out of the house, get them, and not so much anymore, but even
Once
online,
upon a time.
get them to do something, get them to do something, get them to be involved in something good, something positive. So we find something fun for them to do, the real F word, not the other F word, fun.
Yes, yeah.
What would be fun? And then we find them, get them to start doing it. And if they have a spouse, then we get them to do that with them. And we just bring them out of the dark room and get them to do whatever they do. If they're in Iowa, we get them to go square dancing. If they're in California, we get them to go to yoga class together. I mean, we do whatever we have to do to get people to form bonds of intimacy, which is tricky because if you don't know how to do it and you're afraid of it, even if you're married for 10 years, it's a big deal. So we do couples counseling, just like I have a split screen with you, I have a split screen with couples. And we do individual work with the wives because the wives, 70% of all divorces have to do with sex addiction. And 75% of those women are suffering from some form of post-traumatic stress disorder because who wants to keep catching their husband looking at women with giant boobs?
Interesting. Yeah, I've never heard that statistic before.
Did you know that almost 30,000 people right now, every second, are watching porn in the United States?
It doesn't shock me, especially these days. I wonder what those numbers must be like. Because a couple weeks ago, that whole thing with Jeffrey Toobin happened from the New Yorker.
Right.
Which when I heard that, the first thing I thought of was sex addict.
Right.
Because it was during normal working hours. He was on this Zoom call in a business meeting or whatever. Didn't know he was on the call, whatever the details were. But the point was he was supposed to be working,
Right. Yeah. Well, I talk to men all the time that have two screens up. One is porn, and the other one is some sort of business activity, especially with the COVID stuff going on. Another statistic that interests me is that almost $4,000 a second in this country is being spent on porn. So it's not free.
Really?
$4,000 a second.
A
few years ago, we made some effort. I don't know, some crazy misguided effort to call some of these higher grade porn producers and porn sites. And we just wanted them to allow us to put, how the warning label is on cigarettes?
Yeah, yeah.
We asked if we could just put a real easy warning label on before every one of these porn things that came up on the internet. And the guy I thought he was going to pee his pants. He laughed so hard. He said, I'd have to sell one of my Rolls Royces if I did that.
So getting into the porn industry a little bit, I don't know how much you know about it as far as like the backgrounds of the women that are involved in this. What are they like?
They call here, we get at least 1 or 2 calls a month from sex workers, whether it's prostitute or massage people or porn, porn, we call them, everyone wants to be called a porn star, but there's just a few of those. But every women that get drawn into it, like people that emigrate to areas where like California, where there's not enough work for beautiful women. And so they degenerate themselves into and find ways to make a living. Some of it's prostitution and stripping, and some of it's massage, but a good deal of it is porn. Some of it is high end, in a studio, and some of it's just in a rented motel room. But there's always somebody around that's advertising for young girls and giving them $1,000 for a couple of hours of time, because they'll get all that money back 50 times.
So with women, one stat that I've heard is that there's a very high number of them that have some experience in their past with sexual trauma or molestation or when they were a kid. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It's almost 100% some kind of problem. But we get calls all the time, and we refer them to, there are places where they can get help. That we don't specialize in that, but we do refer women on. So the trauma that they receive is generally incest or abuse. Men are not kind to women. And part of that has to do with the culture and the way movies are made, and certainly the way porn is made. Because if you watch if you watch porn, you'll see, I think the statistic is that 85% of every porn clip is abusive of women. It doesn't have anything to do with anything like equality. And so women are abused, and they're again suffering from some sort of trauma, PTSD, and they have to be handled in that fashion.
That makes me think about a lot of young men, that they're maybe discovering porn at the age of 11, like my generation. I'm almost 29. And what is the average age that young men are seeing porn for the first time now?
It's getting lower and lower. About 5 years ago, it was 12 or 13. And now, the other day, it was a month ago, I got a call from a young man in the Midwest. And it was, you could tell it was a little kid. I mean, he was like 9 years old. And he said to me, "Why is the man pee-peeing in the lady's face?" And so I said, "Who is this?" And he says, "My name is such and such, and I'm from Minnesota or somewhere." And I said, "Well, this is wonderful that you're calling me. I'm glad you did." And I had a good talk with him about what it was. I didn't want to go too far because I wanted to talk to his parents. So I said, I need to talk to your mommy now. And he said he wouldn't because she would beat him. And I said, "She won't beat you." So his mommy got on the phone and she said she was going to beat the hell out of him right away. And I said, "You're not going to do that, or else I'll call Child Protection Services in your town, and I will do it in less than a minute. You're going to listen to me. And when your husband comes home, you're going to have a good talk with this young man because he's a hero. He's asking a question that most kids don't answer, don't ask." And so that kid it was a month ago, and he's doing great now. His parents got on the phone and they started crying. And they had I did a free session with them because I felt so proud of the kid. And I was very happy to instruct them on how to talk to him and some books to get for him. Some nice books that talk about intimacy. They learned a lot too. And they told me that. They said, "We didn't know all this stuff ourselves."
Wow, that's crazy. 9 years old.
9 years
That
old.
makes me think also about just a lot of young men, they're discovering this porn so early. And then when it comes time for their first sexual experience, they don't really know what to do or what's going on because they only are acting out what they've already seen. The brain, of course, being the hard drive, or the head being the hard drive, and you having that software implemented. If all you see is a girl getting smacked, getting her hair pulled, stuff like that, that's what you're going to try and replicate.
Yeah, or someone shooting semen in somebody's face. I mean, there's no woman in the world that likes that. Nobody wants to do. No woman. I've never heard of a woman. I've asked the question because I'm in the business. Do you really like that? They're like, no part of that. No part of that. So there's something called PIED, P-I-E-D. Have you heard of that?
Porn-induced erectile dysfunction,
Yeah.
yes.
So most of the people that call me have PIED if they're doing porn, and they look at their wife, and of course their wife, if they have a kid or two or three or four, they don't look like these 18-year-old kids that are doing the porn. And so what happens is that the brain rewires and rewires and rewires to the point where their girlfriends, their online girlfriends, are the people, that's the real sex they're having. And they lose interest in their wife because of our society. And we want everything young, we want everything fresh, we want everything fit, we want everything buff.
And we want it now.
And what happens to your poor wife? I mean, the woman that gets the cold compress when you have the flu, what happens to her? Well, you throw her out because now you've got your girlfriends and you can go in the dark room and watch them and have sex in that way. So people get porn-induced erectile dysfunction with real live people because they're so used to having control, with their mouse, the mouse over what they watch, and they can watch any scene, anything they want, anytime. And of course, everybody comes to me with these crazy, you start spinning out, and you're desperate to look at women with puffy nipples, or you're a foot guy, or you're a rear, an anus guy. I mean, it's just beyond belief what people get hooked up in.
So I've done a little research as well on Patrick Carnes. who he wrote
Yeah.
Out of the Shadows. Is that correct?
Yes.
Um, and he talks a little bit about the arousal template, which was something I thought was very interesting. Because basically, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, but the arousal template, there's a reason why we're sexually attracted to what we are sexually attracted to,
Right.
and we're acting out some kind of former trauma. Can you talk about your experience and maybe some of the people that you've dealt with and what exactly that is?
Well, the arousal template is based on, some people say it's nature, and some people say it's nurture. I believe more in the nurture part. So, however, sex was presented to you in the most exciting, wonderful form is where your arousal template as you mature from 0 to 15, where it's formed. And that's the software. So the arousal template is no more than software, and it kicks in automatically in a nanosecond, so fast that you think that that's who you are. But if you can observe the arousal template, you can finally realize that, my God, I've been under the illusion that I had to have the perfect woman with the perfect breasts and the perfect rear end, with no stretch marks and no spider veins. It doesn't happen with real people. And the porn stars get old too.
Yes, indeed. What is your percentage split of male sex and porn addicts versus female sex and porn addicts?
We find that the people that call that are females are more addicted to love and relationship. So they're
Interesting.
not really addicted. Very seldom do I have a woman that's addicted to porn. Most women watch porn because they can get a guy, they can have sex, or they can pretend they're having intimacy with a guy while he's watching someone else have sex and having sex with her. So, and there are women that are so desperate for men that they'll do anything, including have sex with their wife, their husband's best friend, or a guy they meet on the street. I mean, whatever guys can conjure up that's weird and wacky because of the porn, you watch it on porn sites, they'll try and get their wife to do. And if you're a love addict or a relationship addict and you're afraid because you're still a woman and women are not treated the same in this country, no matter what anybody says, make the same amount of money, they're not treated the same way. And so a lot of women are dependent on men for an income or for a house, a roof over their heads. And they're afraid to mess that up because they don't know where they will go.
Well, with women too, in terms of society, whatever it is, women are valued in a different, more sinister way up front, which is for their looks and what they can provide.
Yeah, and
Young men,
they bought into that too. I mean, Madison Avenue gets them to buy cosmetics and boob jobs and little tiny string bikinis. I mean, thongs and things like this. And it's crazy that women are part of the problem too, unknowingly, by all this mass marketing that makes them into objects.
interesting. Yeah.
Look at Kim Kardashian. I mean, my understanding is she doesn't have any talent to do anything but walk around in bikinis and be provocative and doesn't. There's no talent there. She just makes millions of dollars just by appearing on online.
And the reason that she got famous originally and came into kind of the public knowledge was because of a porn tape of hers
Right,
leaked
right,
air quotes.
right.
Uh,
Well, she has people that she spends a fortune every week. There was an article I read recently. I'm pretty sure it was the same guy who she employs for a lot of money every week so that every day she will appear, somewhere in the media.
yeah. I mean, it's just kind of like all encompassing now because we have these phones. So we just see boobs, asses, like the whole Instagram model thing. It's just always in our face. And if you are an addict that can't control yourself, it's like you have an unlimited access to heroin because of it.
Yep, 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 yep.
So thinking about that, kind of rounding third here a little bit, let's talk about some treatment, recovery, stuff like that, and how someone can get their life back on track.
Mhm. Well, depending upon your income level, the problem we get is that a lot of people have blown their lives up, and when they finally call us, they've lost their job, lost their family, they've lost damn near everything. And so we charge a fee for what we do because we have to support our families too. But you can, if you don't have a nickel and you're watching this thing, go to the 12 steps. There's three groups, three major groups: Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, Sex Addicts Anonymous, SAA, and SA, Sexaholics Anonymous. And they have meetings almost everywhere, maybe not the country, but certainly anywhere around urban areas. There are good meetings and they're good people. There are no professionals there, so you're really not going to do, you're not going to go do what we do. We go down deep into your psychology and we update your software. What you're doing with the 12 steps, as far as I know, is that you're using a very, very solid sound program developed, by the AA, and which the sex groups replicated, and they just it's useful. What do they say? Keep coming back. It works, and it does. It helps. But I wasn't going to be one of these people that had to go to 5 meetings a week and the SLAA picnic on Saturday and Sunday. I didn't want that kind of life. I wanted be more independent. So the treatments that we came up with they're based on 2 things. Number one, you're not your mind, and we convince you and have you understand that. And number 2, you can fix it. So what we're trying to do here is to get not just talk therapy. So because my addict laughed when I was doing talk therapy. It didn't catch me. But what we do here is teach people that we teach them to be their own therapist. That's what we do. And you can't fix this unless you fix it. You fix it.
And you need help fixing it.
You need help to have people teach you how to. What we do here is different than traditional talk therapy. We teach you how to take our job. We teach you, we're trying to put ourselves out of job as soon as you make the phone call to us. I mean, that's
so regulating emotion, things like that.
Yeah, watching what he's doing. And it's humanly possible, although it's not well taught to watch your mind. Because have you ever heard you know what a porn filter is, right?
No.
For a computer.
Oh yeah, like Covenant Eyes or something like that.
Right. So we want, those things don't work too well. They work somewhat, but they don't work too well because most of my clients, when they put porn filters on their computers and their phones, they spend more time trying to get around them, which is ridiculous. So what we're trying to do here is help you install your own porn filter, your own hooker filter, your own boob filter, so that in the nanosecond that it takes for you to look at a woman's boobs jiggling when you're walking down the street, like you see, we see that.
Yeah.
Or when you go to the beach and people have bikinis on, in the nanosecond that you could frame it out as, wow, that's hot stuff. And then start to let your body get that rush. That what we do is help you install software.
The beard test.
The beard test, yeah. I'm a man. I'm not a kid. Just rub your hand on your face, and if you hear a sound, you're a man. So what we're trying to do is get you to have a filter that says, "Hey, that's not your business. Hey, pay attention to your wife," or "Let's go get a hot dog," or there's nothing there for you. You're an older guy, and that girl's 20 years old. That's the input we want you to get, rather than just the rush that you're used to getting of going to that dark place where it's going to take you down.
What are some of the things that you do for yourself on a daily basis to keep your mind healthy and in shape to the point to where you're not acting out anymore?
the most important two things, phrases that I say, and these are, I can't, we don't have time to go into it today, I'm sure, but they're called koans, Koan. And my wife was a Tibetan Buddhist nun, and she helped me find these two koans that have been most useful to me. A koan is kind of a riddle that you give somebody if you're a Buddhist in Tibet. These were 6,000 years old, and they were whispered from wise man to wise man to wise man. So if I can help your audience by telling you that what I say, especially when I'm triggered, not just by women, but by anger, by fear, by shame, by anything that comes up for me, that I know is an intrusion, is I put my hand on my heart and I say, what's always true? And then I get still for a second. So what's always true is that I'm not my mind. What's always true that I am conscious awareness, and that I don't have to buy into the anger, the fear, the boobs, the rear ends. I don't have to buy into whatever it is. So what's always true? And I say that maybe 50 times a day to myself, out loud if I can. And it brings me back to the now. So, which is, we also get our clients to read another book by Eckhart Tolle called Practicing the Power of Now. And he talks about there is no future and there is no past. You are here. And if you worry about the past and you project into the future, you're not being in the moment and you're really not having a good time. So the other koan I use is how good can I stand it? It's kind of silly, sounds kind of silly because it sounds ridiculous. Well, what do you mean how good? You can stand it good. Well, maybe not. Put my hand on my heart, I say, how good can I stand it? How good can I stand it? And that elevates me. It allows me to leave the stinking thinking, and I've got that hooked up. So I say it. It's just like the beard test. It's like the other in my book. There's a lot of interesting ways for you to not act out, to interrupt your mind, to interrupt the cycle. That's why the book's called Breaking the Cycle, because you do break the cycle if you do what we say, your way. What the interesting thing about the book is that the homework I give in the book every week is two things. Read chapter 1 and tell me, what does it say? And number 2, how can it help you? And then send it to me, because I want to know what you know, and I want to know what you don't know. Because if you know the stuff in the book your way, you're not going to want to do this stuff anymore. And so that's essentially how we're helping people help themselves. Because at the end of the book, I want people to say, I could have written that book. It would just, the stories would have been different in it. You understand?
Absolutely. I think that is the perfect spot to end it. Breaking the Cycle. George, thank you so much for coming on today. Go out and get this book. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
My pleasure. Have a good day.